This is the table of contents. So it's just 10 slides, like 10 main topics, and each slide has a lot of content on it because I don't like to have it spread out and then you like can't see the forest or the trees, all at the same time. So I'll be going through the slides. You don't have to read them. Yeah, if you guys have questions throughout, let me know. Otherwise, I'll try to get through it quick just so we can get to questions at the end. Yeah, if we're going, all right, that's good. So I split it up into there's patent topics, open source topics, and then a mix of the two. What Carr calls open source patents, which are just patents in the open source context. I'll go over just the basics of what patents cover, how they differentiate between that and copyright, trade secrets, trademarks, just the other IP. Then just go over the patent process, what patents, what the parts of the patents are. Then for open source, there's going to be 3 licenses that I'll be going into that are very different. There's the MIT license, which is really common, the GPL license, which is a copyleft license, and then the Apache license. So I'll just kind of go over what those are, how they deal with patents, and what they cover. And then I'll get into Tesla's position. So a lot of people know that Elon talks bad about patents. So he says patents are for the weak, or he says that he open sources his patents, but he doesn't really open source his patents, or at least not all of them. He also has tons of patents that he files every year. And I mean, his stance is actually pro open source. And so I think that the way he does it is a good way to use patents. And he uses them mostly defensively. And so I'll get into that as well. And then I have just example software patents. Some of them deal with things like ChatGPT, Midjourney. And I tried to find some blockchain type patents, and maybe we could try to find more. But I'll just go through them very quickly just so you can see what they look like and just kind of what they cover. So for the first slide, what is a patent? I don't know if are you able to see this, or should I zoom in? Is that okay? Okay. Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's a lot of information on each page. I'll go through it slowly. I only have 10 substance slides, so I could just get through it. For IP, there's 4 different types of IP. There's patents, trademarks, trade secrets, and copyright. Patents cover ideas, so the idea itself, not how it's written. So some people that have software think if they reword the source code, then it gets over the patent, but that's not true. You could reword it any way you want, as long as it still follows the same flow and same ideas are covered. It doesn't matter how it's worded, it'll still cover it. And also people say that like software is always advancing. So how do I know that my patent will still cover something that comes in the future? And as long as it builds on the idea, the patent will still cover it. So I'll go into the next slide. I'll go further into this, but the main thing is patents cover ideas, copyrights cover expressions. So it's the way that things are written. So if you write a book, like maybe like you write a Harry Potter book, if someone takes those characters are copyrighted. So if I write a book about Harry Potter doing something in the wizard world, they could sue me for copyright infringement because I stole the creative aspects of it. In the way that it was expressed. And then also for source code, if you copy the actual way it's written, that'll also be copyright protected. But then if you were to reword it, it would not be copyright protected. So it's all about how it's written and not the idea itself. So like this is your guys' PlebLab's copyright symbol, and they have this at the bottom of their web pages. The reason that you include it in the bottom of your web pages is to give them notice. So if someone were to copy something like the images that are on your website, or if they just copy and paste like the text that you include there, you could have, now that you have the notice, you get statutory damages, which means that every time that they infringe, every time that they reproduce the images or the content that you have on your page, you could sue them, and no matter how much money they've made off of replicating it, you can get statutory damages of $150,000. So without that notice, you'd only get $200 because they're not aware that you have copyright. Anyway, so then trademarks, that's PlebLab's trademark. It's something that gives you brand recognition. So when someone sees it, they know that that's your product or your service and not someone else's. Trade secrets is whenever you safeguard something, or like if you don't produce your source code. If you have your source code just within the company and you don't show anyone what it looks like, the reason you have trade secret laws is if there's like usually a rogue employee. So if an employee takes all the source code, puts it on a flash drive, they quit, they go over to a competitor, they take that source code and they try to use it for competing product. First off, that's a trade secret issue because they stole something that was supposed to be safeguarded, like a business secret. And then it's also copyright protected. So that'd be copyright infringement because they didn't reword it. And it could be patent, if it was patent protected, it could be patent infringement as well. So you need to have patent on it though. Okay, so those are the 4 types. Then the next big bullet is about patents themselves. They cover the idea for 20 years from the time that you file it. And then in contrast to copyright, which copyright is kind of extreme, where you have 70 years or 95 years for corporations from the time of creation. So it's actually 70 years from the time of death. So like, yeah, it's a long time. Design patents are 15 years. I won't go into design patents. They're not usually applied to software. It's mostly things that are like tangible, like maybe the shape of a car, things like that. It's not about usefulness, it's about the way that things look. So trademarks are renewable in 10-year increments, and every 10 years you have to prove that people recognize your brand with your product or service. So anyway, 20 years for patents, and it protects making, using, selling, or importing the product. At the top, I have the USPTO's logo. So I reference the USPTO all the time. It's just the Patent and Trademark Office. That's what issues the patents. And that's it for that slide. So the next slide, I get into why people want patents. And so main reason is for the clients that I have is the Shark Tank idea, where if you're going to be pitching something to an investor, you don't want the investor to think that someone else could just come by and copy it, because then why are they investing in you when it's either someone to copy it or they copy it themselves. Usually investors don't do that, but they have teams of software engineers. And so if they have an idea, if you give them an idea and they don't want to use you or they don't want to pay you the money, they could just have their software team create the same thing. And so copyright wouldn't protect that if you just give them the idea and you don't actually show them what the source code looks like. You need a patent to protect it so that the investors can't copy it, or a competitor can't just come by and copy it. So it gives your product some kind of value. Money-wise. And I don't know, do you guys use that Bitcoin symbol or use, okay. I didn't know if you, I was thinking currency. So I think Bitcoin, anyway. Yeah, so patents, they can be used offensively or defensively. So open source licensing is usually a defensive maneuver, though depending what terms you have in there, it could be kind of more of an offense. There are other types of licenses, so you could do like royalties. So maybe based on the number of users that use the software, you could say, give me 15% of your revenue, something like that. Yeah, for defensive uses, a lot of it you could either sell it or license it to somebody, or you could have investors come on board, or you could just have exclusive use on your own and just make sure that people can't compete with you for a period of time. Defensive, cross-licensing is where when you get sued for patent infringement, you go back and you sue them as well. So it kind of disincentivizes them from suing you, and it kind of protects you where maybe they want like, $100,000 from you or something. You could say, well, you also owe me $100,000. Let's just cut it even. We don't neither of us owe each other anything. So a lot of what? Horse trading. Okay, so we call it cross-licensing. Horse trading. Yeah, so a lot of companies do this, and they actually there's so many patents that the big companies have that they don't have the resources to go through and actually see what the value is of every patent and whether they actually infringe every single one. So they'll say, like, we have 100 patents on this technology, you have a similar technology. Are we really going to go through this huge fight of battling 100 patents? And so they end up just, unless they have like a really specific patent, like sometimes Apple sues Samsung or vice versa, on like a very like key component. Otherwise, it's not worth the resources. So a lot of the big companies, they won't actually use them offensively. They just use them defensively, so that way other big companies don't sue them. And so they actually go for quantity over quality because they just want to say we have X number in that field. So the number right now in the industry is typically 500 per year. So they have 10,000 patents over a 20-year period. So another thing is, yeah, so cross-licensing or counterclaims, similar concepts. And then, or open source I put into the defensive side, and that's how it's typically used. Next slide. So the parts of a patent, so I put these both on the same slide just to have less slides, but there's parts of the patent and the patent process. So there's claims, which actually define the scope of the patent. So you describe what the invention is through what is called the detailed description sometimes they call it detailed description of the drawings, but you have images that show what the patent does for software. That's typically flowcharts. And so you'll have like step 1 and then like an arrow step 2, you know, just kind of the process of the way that the software works. And so you'll have those images, then you'll describe in detail how each one works. And so that's usually like 10 to 30 pages of just describing all the ways that it works. And then the claims at the very end, and they're much shorter, and it just describes, based on your description, what it is that you think the invention is and why it's different than what's on the other side. There's stuff that is patentable. So you can open source patents. And so I'll get into that and when I get into the open source and all that. But there are ways that you can say, I will not sue you on my patent. You guys can invent off of this idea, and you don't have anything to fear from me, at least. Like someone else might have a patent on it, and I can't speak for them, but you can say, if I have a patent on this, you guys can create Bitcoin off of it, anything like that. Typically, you'd include something that says, if you guys do invent off of this, don't sue me for patent infringement. Otherwise, our license is void, and I'll sue you back. So it's usually contingent on things like, yes, you can use this technology, but as long as you do it in a fair manner, and like you don't try to like make money off of it or something like that. Sometimes they'll have that as a contingency. It's like, make sure you keep it open source for everyone. I'll get into that, but there are ways that you could say, even if I have a patent, I don't want to impede this type of development. And so that's something like what Elon does with the Tesla patents mostly. And I'll get to that, but yeah, there are ways to be, I guess, a good soul and still have the patents useful, at least for defensive purposes. So the open source slides, these are the 3 that I'll be going over. The GPLs, they have version 3 as of 2007. I'll get into it, but I'm not a huge fan of the GPL. There's Apache and MIT. I've heard, I guess, MIT is the most popular right now. It's also the simplest, and I don't prefer it over the Apache, but like I said, I'll get into that in the next slide. As a broad overview, I'm sure you guys know what open source is. It just means that it's a license that says you're allowed to use the software that I'm providing. So if you provide software in GitHub or something like that, you'd say, this is getting pretty loud. Anyone that uses this, I won't come after you as long as you don't come after me. And it's also, it'll have like a disclaimer that says there's no warranties to this. If it acts up, I'm not liable. Just use it at your own risk. But it gives people reassurance that whatever they're using is not copyrighted. Typically, it's limited to copyright. They do have disclaimers in there that get to patent rights as well. I'll kind of get into that. So yeah, the second bullet, the rights to use, distribute, or modify the source code. So not just you can use my source code, but you're allowed to actually make changes to it. And you're allowed to redistribute it. And typically, if you redistribute it, they have a requirement in the license that you include the license with the redistribution. So anyone down the line that sees it knows that it does have that requirement. Okay, so usually I think that this is found either at the bottom of the source code file that you're in, like the disclaimer that this is subject to a license. It's either in the file itself. Sometimes it's in a notice folder or like a license folder or file. I don't work with software much, so maybe you guys know better where to find it. Do you have an idea where you usually find? File called license, root of the repository. Okay, and license usually. Oh, that's cool. Top. Yeah. So are you familiar with which ones are copyleft, or do you just have to read through it to find out? Yeah. Colenso's copyleft. So you'll avoid it if you see that they have Colenso?
No, in this case, it's actually good.
Okay.
But like I have proprietary stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Let's see. So yeah, I was going to get into the copyright patent distinctions. Open source typically is copyright functionality, where like, so actually you can get around an open source license if you just reword it usually. And I don't mean just reword like simple words. If you still have like the same, I don't know, it gets more challenging when you get to the fact issues, because just changing a few words won't be enough. But if you change enough, it's not the same thing. It's sort of like with music, like someone will copyright their song that they wrote, and now you heard that song, you're like, oh, I kind of like the tune of that, but how similar can you get to the tune without being copyright infringement? And so it's definitely a fact issue. The best way to get around copyrights of like a license that, or like some kind of software you're trying to use, you don't like the license, is to have somebody include the same functionality without having seen the license. So for copyright infringement, you have to show that they had actual copying. So actual copy means that they saw it, or they had it means that they saw it and they copied it. So a lot of times you can't prove that someone saw it, but you can prove that, like based on the circumstances, circumstantial evidence, that they had access to it and it's substantially similar. So access means maybe it's just publicly available and they would have seen it based on their computer, or like maybe like I don't know, just that they had access to it and that it's super similar to it. But if you have someone that's working on a computer that restricts them from going on GitHub or restricts them from actually being able to access those websites, you could say, well, they were using this computer, they didn't have access to it, we restricted it. All we did was just we looked at the source code, the software engineers didn't. We looked at that source code, we came up with the ideas that were behind the source code, we conveyed it to them, and then they went off those ideas and drafted it completely on their own.
That's like the show Podcast Fire, where they literally just the exact same things where it's an apart file. Yeah, they took apart the BIOS, and then they excluded that software engineer to go out and recreate it, and then with the lawyers standing outside the door, so no one would.
There you go. That'll work. Yes, you just have to seclude the people that are going to be working on it and say they did not have access, and then now you have no copyright issues, and you don't have to worry about the license. But that won't get around patents. Patents do not require that you actually had access to it, that you actually saw the patent, nothing like that. As long as you perform the steps that are included in the patent claim, it doesn't matter if you had notice or not. So that's one reason. If you want to prevent people from using your source code, you could put a patent on it, and then they can't circumvent it by secluding. Yep. All right, we'll go to the next slide. I think is where I start going over these three. So I put little emojis based on my reaction. Or like little, I don't know, you call those not emoji. Anyway, so the GPL I really don't like. It's copyleft, but it's the strictest that I know of copyleft, where if you distribute source code, so it's copyleft in a general sense is if you use source code that included the GPL license as part of it, then anything that you add on to it and that you use has to also be provided open source. You have to show someone the actual source code. You can't just keep it proprietary. You can't keep it inside. You have to republish whatever it is you add on to it. Some copyleft is stricter than others. The GPL, if you add on to it in a different file, like maybe it's not part of the core functionality, but you are running it. Like maybe it's just something that's like tangential to whatever it is that you are working on, but it has to be used together in order to have the software work. Everything that you have has to still be provided. Some copyleft's less strict, where it's just whatever you add on to that file itself. So if you keep the GPL software in a different file, you're good. But it's still, you have to be careful because whatever has GPL, they call it infecting. It can infect all the rest of the work that you're doing. And so, the GPL was the Free Software Foundations founded by Richard Stallman. It all was formed based on what he called his manifesto, and that made me nervous just hearing that word. I was like, is this anyway? I looked into Richard Stallman. He's not a communist. He seems like a good guy, really. No, he's a goofy guy. I've seen some of the videos. I had to look into this guy after I heard about him. I was like, what is this guy all about? No, he seems like a good guy, and I hope that he listens in on this and he lets me rewrite his GPL because I have so many issues with it. 3. V3. Yeah, I think I also read the notes of the changes from V2 to V3, so I know some of the changes they made. And he said that he contacted 2 attorneys to help him with it, but I don't think that he actually allowed them to provide input based on the way that the GPL reads. I don't want to roast him because I'm really hoping that one day I'll be able to rewrite the whole thing. Yeah, it's I wrote what? oh, please connect me, and then yeah, we'll get rid of that GPL and just completely restart it. It's written so badly. So it's written like it's like a novel, not like a contract, like it's supposed to be. And then he just like, here's the policies that I want to push. And then if you use any GPL, you have to follow whatever policies I came up with. But it doesn't have a normal contract language where you say party A has to do X, party B has to do Y, and they have these obligations to each other. It's not worded like that at all. It's like, here's my policy of my manifesto. Follow it or get sued. And there was a lot of issues at first of whether this was even enforceable. They're like, is this even a contract? What is this? And I think that's still an issue in court. I mean, the version 3 was 2007. There were earlier versions before that, like from what did I say, 1985 or so, or 1999. And it was litigated for a while, and I think it still is, whether at least certain provisions in it are even enforceable, just because the way it's written is awful. The next slide, I won't go over it, but I have slide 6.5, which is just some of my first issues with why I hate GPL license. I'll just go over the first bullet. Actually, yeah, so the first bullet, so it says in there, states should not allow patents to restrict development and use of software. So this is, again, a policy argument, but also states have no say in patents. Patents are federal. So there's nothing a state could do to affect patent rights at all. So I don't even know why he said this. I was thinking maybe he said it because sometimes people refer to countries as like member states, but then in the same page, he mentions countries. And there's no definition of member states. There are no member states. So yeah, he definitely meant to say states, like US states, and he didn't understand how patents are federal. So that was one of my issues. There were a lot of issues. These are just some of them. Anyway, I won't get into it, but don't like the GPL. The MIT license is the most common. It's very short. The MIT, what I was trying to show is the MIT license is really short. It's one paragraph, or like 2 paragraphs, I guess, but it's pretty much all the words that are on the slide. It's this long. Issues I have with the MIT license: if somebody sues you for patent infringement and they're using the source code that you provided on your license, typically for open source licenses, you could cancel their license because they're like, you sued me on your patent, or you sued me for copyright infringement for using some of your stuff, and now you're not following the license terms, and you're now like, I can't. So typically you could sue them back. You're like, you're no longer protected under the license. I could sue you for copyright and patent infringement. I could sue you back, that kind of thing. MIT license doesn't allow that. There are no exceptions to, or there's no way to terminate the license based on them not following the license. So if you provide source code out into GitHub or something like that, and they start using it, they are allowed to use it. There's no way for you to say, sorry, I take that back.
There's a legal case going on right now. There's a developer that somebody had something issue with 2.4, and so they just like found somebody to well, I don't know what the current status is. I just don't know the actual like litigation.
Huh.
I can definitely show you.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. Maybe we could talk about it after. Okay, yeah, we could look at it maybe after, and then yeah, we could look at it now. So anyway, if you want to include an open source, I guess you guys probably already know, like if you want to include a license, you just include something like what it has here. I don't know if you can see that. It has copyright year, name of copyright owner, and then just this little disclaimer. And then for the Apache, you just include the URL. The MIT license is short enough that you don't even have to include the URL. You just include the whole thing, either at the bottom of each file, or I guess typically in a license folder. Yeah, and the reason I like the Apache more is it's actually written like a contract, like a really well-written contract. And it allows you to void the contract, to void the license if they sue you. So you could use it defensively. Yeah, MIT doesn't allow that, Apache does. So you could say, yeah, as long as you use this fairly, you don't sue me. I think it might also include if you sue other people that are included in the license. So like, if I provide software based on a license, and then one of you sues the other that uses the software, well, now I can sue the person who's sued again. So Well, yeah, there's no warranties. So if they use your software, I mean, sometimes there's a I guess I can't pull it up. There's a disclaimer that says if if you use the software and it does act up, that you can't sue us for that. Yes, they all have that warranty at the bottom. MIT, that's like half of everything that they include is that warranty. So that you know which one has which license.
Yeah.
These are the only three I looked into, and I just knew that Apache was written well. I mean, I read Apache just after I finished the GPL, so maybe I'm biased. I'm like, that was just so much different. But yeah, Apache's not copyleft. It seems like a great one to use. It's very friendly to people who are using it. I think MIT is just so short, and software engineers don't like to read much. I think that might be part of it. And it's very legal the way that it's written in Apache. I wish I could share. Maybe I'll figure out later how to share the screen to show you it. But it has like a defined terms section, and then it has like the sections are really broken out. The MIT license is just like it's literally just this much text. It's very easy just to see it. That's simple. Yes, I can look into it after. Okay. All right, I'll go to the next slide. Oh yeah, I already did that. So I came up with these images on Midjourney just to show the pros and cons of why you'd want to use open source. Just like, God, feeling really good. Yeah, the Midjourney I'm really impressed with. I'm like, it's pretty much the same guy, just in different scenarios. So pros, altruism, you could say I am the best. I am just helping people all the time. You can kind of become the platform like for things. So Android did this, where Android open sourced their software, and now there's so many things that build off of Android, and Android is all over the place because they open sourced it and allowed other people to build onto it. You could set the terms for the license. You could even create your own license. You don't have to use one of the standard ones, and so you could have it contingent on anything. Or, I mean, if it's open source, you wouldn't be asking for money or something, but you could say like, as long as you use it for Bitcoin and not Ethereum or any other shitcoins, right? Because you guys hate shitcoins here. So you say this is Bitcoin only. Yeah, you guys start using it for Doge or something. The license is void and we're going to sue you. You could use it on a license. You can get creative. Yeah, I know it's not your style, but like it depends. Or you could say, as long as it's not used for like Y Combinator startups or something. Like if you guys don't like the Y Combinators, you could say you guys can't use my stuff. But if you're not a Y Combinator, you can't use my stuff. You mean okay, yeah. If you want to use copyleft, that would keep them away. Just is that what you're thinking? You'll use copyleft. You love copyleft. Wait, I thought you said your proprietary code. Yeah, no, I get that. So if they make changes to it or anything, they have to give back to you. That makes sense. So, I mean, no, GPL has that. Yeah, GPL you can, yeah, it does have that in GPL. Yeah, I guess I should include that in the bullets. I was just kind of going through my thoughts. Yeah, GPL definitely has that. Yeah, GPL is very strong. The problem with it is if you want other people to build on it, they'll be more reluctant to use your software to build on because they'll see the GPL and they're like, well, we do have some proprietary stuff, even if you don't. So they'll be like, let's just find something else that does something similar that we don't have to have the GPL for. So if you really want everyone to use it, you wouldn't include copyleft because then. Okay. And they have their copyleft? Okay. Yeah. They had to provide everything. Yeah, or they'd probably end up doing is just removing that entire section of code and restarting it. They wouldn't want to comply. Better than giving away all their software. So yeah, if you want people to actually use it, I don't know. People be more reluctant if you use copyleft, even if you don't care. Okay, so cons, if you use open source, you're not making any money off licensing it because you're providing it for free, of course. You can be outcompeted, so maybe you put all this effort to actually writing the software, and then other people could just copy and paste it, and now they're at the level playing field as you. You've seen that a lot.
Foundation.
Okay, and is that an issue? Do you think that you'd want to avoid?
I don't know.
Yeah, open source is great, but mm.
Kind of like you have to do it. Think about not MPK this. So there's two companies. One right? Our foundation came out of. So, but the cool thing about it, oh, and that was just I thought. So like, we're not hard. Yeah, I don't know. How played out, but case I've ever
I mean, anytime someone uses a file from GitHub, they're getting an advantage. So like you could have made money off of it, or you could have been ahead of them because you already have this done. So you're giving your competitors an advantage anytime you open source something. Although, like you said, it could help you as well because they could say, "Hey, change these things and it's more efficient." Or yeah, it's good, especially if other people do it. If everyone in the community is doing open source, then it's going to help everyone. Like, you said it's called Colenso. How do you spell that? I'm gonna look that one up. Okay, I'll look that one up after, and then if it's yeah, it just depends how many people you want actually building on it, right? So like they'll be if they see it's copy left, they might not even touch it. They're like, we're not even gonna read this because it's not worth it. Well, I mean, when you start building the software, you want to know what you're including in there. So maybe as you open up software files, just say, hey, am I going to be copying this from GitHub or any of the others? Does it have copy left? Do we want to have something left proprietary, or do we want all of our source code out there for anyone to copy? Yeah, if you don't want any copy left, make sure that anytime you open up a file, if it has copy left, don't even read it. It's not worth your time. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to include the source code into your work and then find out later that you used something that was copy left, and then it's much harder to extract that code or to try to get around it somehow. It's definitely harder later on. Okay. That's the ethos of Bitcoin. There must be something proprietary, right? Aren't you guys trying to make some kind of profit? No? But can't someone just copy all your code and create their own service? So you're just hoping that everyone in the Bitcoin community.
Copy the answer. Yeah, it's like
Okay. Well, it still seems risky because you could just find one smart guy who wants to just copy it and make some money.
There's a project that I like called Sweet CRM. It's based on another project called Sugar CRM. That's really cool. And they have an open source version. I'm not sure what license. They had an open source version. They just essentially retired it as a community version. And that community version was taken up by another company. They upgraded it. They sold service level SLAs in order to. So the code was free, but if you wanted to do like upgrades to it,
Okay.
I don't have that's right. Knowing
And it makes it harder to modify, is what you're saying? Okay.
Where everybody that's why you have a lot of companies like they'll not say what they're doing, not really talking about it, and then they'll just launch, and then people will copy. You'll see a lot of that happen. Big project will get announced, big funding, they'll get reversion over and over and over again.
Okay. Yeah, especially if you want to modify it. If you're not just using it exactly the way it was used, you're gonna want to know why it's, yeah, it makes sense. Okay, so you can still keep like the know-how proprietary, maybe just like the internal comments version. You could keep proprietary and just open source the source code without the notes. Okay. Huh. All right, well, so there are some reasons maybe you want to open source everything, but yeah. It might not work for all industries too. I feel like some they might not need to modify as much. Okay. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like you guys think that they're like incompatible, but I guess you could not, I mean, not completely open source, copyleft everything, and you could keep some stuff proprietary, and then maybe still can contribute to the society without telling them everything. Yeah, go and share all the ideas. I'll put it on the mic. Okay. So some of the cons, circumvention I already talked about. You can get around source code. You could reword it. Also, if someone were to copy your source code and then republish that same source code without the license, they are violating your license by doing that. But the people down the line don't know that. They won't see the copyright license included in there because the people above them didn't include it when they republished it. So there's a risk that further down people don't know that it's licensed, and then you kind of lose out that way. You won't have that $150,000 notice statutory damages. You just have $200, which is not much of a disincentive. There's different issues, I guess. You could also, like I said, undesired, unexpected users. Maybe you didn't know that your competitor is going to be jumping in on this. Yeah, I guess that we'll go to the next slide. So why file a patent on software you plan to open source? Here's some just key points. You could protect the non-open source versions of software. So maybe you do want to have an open source version and then you fix the code, make it more efficient, or do something else with the code, and you want to keep that proprietary. So people in the industry can have the functionality, but maybe not the efficiency or something like that. You can keep that protected with patent. You could also force competitors to follow the license terms, so get around the circumvention. You have leverage if you get sued. This is what I was talking about with cross-licensing. And then, yeah, you also have leverage to force competitors to provide their proprietary software as open source. So you could say, hey, we're going to sue you guys unless you provide yours open source as well. So you keep all the competitors in the same playing field as you. Patents are mostly just a leverage mechanism. So it puts you on an even playing field if you fall behind, or it helps make sure that everyone else is contributing equally. Okay, so this is where I get into Tesla stuff. There's a lot on this slide. I kind of underlined what I thought was important. So it all comes from Tesla's website, what they say about open source. I won't make you guys squint to read this. Carl, I can read it if you'd like. Okay. So they say electric car, this is, I guess, maybe in Elon's words. I don't know who wrote this, but it sounds like him. He goes, electric car programs or programs for any vehicle that doesn't burn hydrocarbons at the major manufacturers are small to non-existent, constituting an average of far less than 1% of total vehicles. So he's saying electric vehicles are so uncommon that their main competitor isn't other electric vehicle companies or people who are going to get into electric vehicles. Their main competitor is these car companies that have gas or diesel. And so he's like, we need to get all the EV companies together in order to beat the gas cars. We don't need to compete against other EVs. And so he's thinking that they kind of already have a monopoly on this, and he's not worried about competition. He's worried about just making sure that his industry does okay. So he's trying to promote everyone, I guess, sort of like Bitcoin, right? You guys are all trying to make sure that Bitcoin is adopted, and you want to make sure everyone in Bitcoin does well. So that would make sense. He also says it is impossible for Tesla to build electric cars fast enough. The market is enormous. Our true competition is not the small trickle of non-Tesla electric cars being produced. So it's like what I was saying. He's not worried about other EVs. He just wants to make sure that Tesla is successful and all the other EV companies. He says the market's enormous. There's no issue with competition. Tesla's pledge. He said Tesla pledges that it will not initiate a lawsuit against any party for infringing a Tesla patent, so long as such party is acting in good faith. So the first part sounds like, oh, you can use our patents, right? Yeah, we will not sue any party for infringing a Tesla patent, but you have to act in good faith. So here's how he defines good faith. Companies have not asserted a patent against them or against a third party that uses technologies in EVs. So if you start suing EV companies, even if you don't sue Tesla, your license to his patents are void. He can start suing you as well. So anything that hurts the EV industry as a whole, he can come after you for it with his patents. So I guess analogous to Bitcoin, someone starts suing people in the Bitcoin space, you find out that they're following one of your patents. You don't like that they're hurting the Bitcoin space, you go ahead and start suing them even though they haven't sued you. So good policy for them. The next thing, if you have challenged any of Tesla's patents, the license is void. Now they can start suing you. So don't try to invalidate Tesla's patents. There's different mechanisms for invalidating patents. And so that's another. Marketed or sold any knockoff products of a Tesla product. Usually when I think of knockoff products, that's more of a trademark issue. So maybe you provide something that looks like Tesla's product, or something that you say is like Tesla but cheaper or something, or you try to. This one seems like it's really broad and vague. So this might just be that anyone. I mean, what do you define as a knockoff product, right? Is it just a competitor? Are all competitors to Tesla knockoff? I think that he's using it just as more of like a trademark thing, where you start using products and you say this is Tesla equivalent or something. But it does seem broad. So I don't know when he's going to start asserting patents. So far, I haven't looked too hard, but I haven't seen Tesla's lawsuits. I know that Tesla keeps getting sued. And so in Tesla's lawsuits where it gets sued, it will have cross claims. So in its cross claims in the suit, and it might lead to cross licensing. But Tesla definitely does have patents. They file patents all the time. I have a link here. I don't know if it'll open on this presentation. Yeah, it won't open in the presentation. Link says that they have 1,300 results for patents right now. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah. So this is, let me just show you how to do a patent search real quick, just so you guys know in case you want to see the patent world. I go to patents.google.com. And then you could just search in here something like car. Let's see, car stuff. And then you could click in the top. I don't know, you can see that they have like a little button right there that looks like a stylus. Click that, and you can edit whatever you want. So assignee, I could put Tesla, enter, and then it has, well, this has 2,000 results, but anyway, that's how you'd find it. You could click on one of the patents. This is illumination apparatus for vehicles is the first one. Download PDF. This is what patents would actually look like. So right here, you have, can you see this all right? I'm circling. Here's the list of inventors. They have 4 inventors on this one. The applicant is Tesla Motors. It has an abstract on the first page and then a representative image. This is one of the drawings. Then it'll have many drawings after that. So you'll see all the different drawings that just show what the image what it would look like. And then all these little annotations will be described throughout the detailed description, which comes after. Let's scroll down through all these drawings. So here's the detailed description. So it has a technical field, description of related art, summary, brief description of the drawings, and then we get into the detailed description of the drawings. And so this will be many pages. And then at the very end, we have the claims. And so this one has 16 claims. The first claim is an independent claim. There's independent claims and dependent claims. Dependent claims depend on the independent. Typically, you have 3 independent claims and 20 claims total, because that's what you get for free whenever you file. After that, they charge you for each independent claim and each dependent claim. But it looks like they only used 2 independent claims. We have claim 1 and claim 11. So I'm going to read through that. Just an illumination module for use in a door handle for a vehicle comprising an illumination source, a first light pipe, a second light pipe, and they have details about what that includes. So anyway, I can get into more specific ones for Bitcoin or anything that's relevant to you guys, but this is just the first Tesla patent that came up. What I was trying to show you guys earlier is this is the MIT license. This is how short it is. So it's very easy to read through. The Apache license is, actually looks like a contract. It has definition of terms, grant a patent license, copyright. As you scroll down, I mean, everything's organized pretty well. And at the bottom, it shows you how to include this. You just include this little section that says copyright and all that detail, but it's very straightforward. The GPL, by contrast, is this. It's written like a novel of policy considerations. It doesn't say who the parties are. They're just like not a definition of terms section. They also have the sections, they don't really make sense to me. They'll talk about patents in a non-patent section. I have a lot of issues with it. I just won't go into it. Anyway, so yeah, Tesla has okay, so I said about, so let me show you this. Right here, it says tesla.com/legal/additional resource number patent lists. This is where they include their open source patents, the patents they allow you to copy, because they said you will not initiate a lawsuit against any party for infringing a Tesla patent. And this is where it lists those patents. And so this is actually not all of their patents. So they'll say, we won't sue you for infringing our patents, but here's the list of patents that are included in that. And it's 361 patents out of what I think they have 766 US patents right now. So it's like, was a little less than half of their patents are included in that. Maybe they just haven't updated it in a while and they need to do that. But I thought it was weird that they didn't include all of their patents on that list. Maybe they're keeping some proprietary and they're saying, we'll sue you on this no matter what. I don't think that Tesla's that kind of company. I mean, I think most big companies just don't go out and file a bunch of lawsuits. Usually the big companies use them defensively. But interesting. Okay, so last page, let's see. These were some of the examples I looked up just quickly, just because I thought they may be more interesting to you than just looking at Tesla's patents. A couple of them were about LLM models like ChatGPT, a couple are about generative AI like Midjourney. I have just brief descriptions. So like one of them's narrowing of output options for an LLM model. Another one's adjusting the score of an LLM model based on look-ahead values. the generative AI. One of them's merging images based on the style of one of the images, modifying an image based on a template where the template is derived from search criteria and corresponding images. So it's kind of, maybe my summary is pretty much what I see as generative AI. And then the blockchain one I found is more of an IoT thing. They use blockchain devices for IoT, and it doesn't seem very useful, but there's a company off of it, and so maybe they are making money. If any of these are interesting, I could look into those. Otherwise, I could try a search and try to find some patents that are more relevant in case you guys want to see what they look like and all that. But otherwise, that's the presentation.